It wasn't just a house. It was a declaration of absolute power carved into marble and lit by 1,000 oil lamps burning through the Roman night. Julius Caesar didn't simply live on the Palatine Hill, he reshaped it. Every courtyard, every painted corridor whispered one thing: this man answers to no one. Senators who crossed that threshold left with trembling hands. Cleopatra herself slept under this roof. The walls witnessed conspiracies that would echo across 2,000 years. Archaeologists have spent decades sifting through the rubble. Now, for the first time, artificial intelligence has reconstructed what no living eye has ever seen. What you are about to see will permanently change the way you picture ancient Rome and the man who nearly made himself its king. Before we step through Caesar's front gate, do something that takes 3 seconds and costs you nothing. Hit subscribe, because this channel reconstructs the world's history buried under centuries of silence. Drop a like if you believe the past deserves to be seen, not just read. And leave a comment right now. Tell us what country and city you are watching from. We have viewers from Sao Paulo to Seoul, from Lagos to London, and every single location on that map makes this community worth building. Now, let's cross the threshold. Caesar is waiting. The Palatine Hill was not chosen by accident. In 44 BC, it sat above the Roman Forum like a jaw clenched over the city's throat, elevated, watching, unreachable to anyone without an invitation or an army. Caesar's residence occupied the southwestern slope, positioned so that every morning the sun struck its facade before touching a single other building in Rome. That was not coincidence. That was theater. The property had been expanded through a series of calculated acquisitions, neighboring homes absorbed, walls dissolved, gardens annexed, until the complex stretched across an area that rivaled small towns in the Roman provinces. Ancient sources describe terraced platforms cut directly into the hillside, each level connected by ramps of travertine stone wide enough for 2 litters to pass side by side without their curtains brushing. At the base of each terrace stood carved limestone basins fed by an aqueduct branch Caesar had personally commissioned, running water in a private residence, a luxury that less than 1% of Rome's population ever touched in their lifetimes. The outer walls were faced with tufa blocks quarried from Veii, the same stone used in Rome's oldest temples, but the surfaces had been stuccoed white and incised with geometric patterns that caught the afternoon light like hammered silver. Guards rotated in shifts of 12, not praetorians. Those came later under Augustus, but hand-selected veterans from Caesar's Gallic campaigns, men who had crossed the Rhine and the Channel and still followed this one Roman without question. The main gate faced north, deliberately oriented away from the Forum's noise, opening instead toward the Circus Maximus, as if Caesar preferred to look at spectacle rather than politics when he left his own front door. Visitors who arrived without appointment were met at this gate by a secretary called a nomenclator, a slave trained to memorize every face of consequence in Rome, who decided in seconds whether your name reached Caesar's ears that day. Most were turned away, even senators, even priests. The hill had swallowed Caesar's ambition whole, and now it digested everyone else on his schedule, not theirs. Step past the gate, and the world contracted into a single corridor of polished basalt, flanked by columns of lunar marble, so white they appeared to generate their own light, even on overcast Roman mornings. At the corridor's end, the atrium opened, and it opened the way a fist unclenches. Suddenly, completely, with a release of pressure that made first-time visitors physically step backward. The compluvium, the rectangular opening cut into the atrium's ceiling, was wider than in any private Roman home of the period. Architectural historians estimate it spanned nearly 9 meters, flooding the floor with a column of daylight that moved across the mosaic like a slow-burning fuse. That mosaic deserves its own sentence. Fragments recovered during 19th century excavations on the Palatine show tesserae, tiny tiles of Egyptian blue, Numidian yellow, and Laconian green, 3 materials that could only arrive in Rome through Caesar's own military supply lines. The impluvium at the atrium's center, the shallow pool catching rainwater from the compluvium above, was lined not with standard terracotta, but with a pale green serpentine stone quarried near Sparta. Standing water in it turned the color of verdigris bronze. Along the atrium walls, niches held ancestor masks, imagines, in painted wax, a Roman tradition. But Caesar's display extended the custom into something transgressive. Among the wax faces of his Julian ancestors hung a portrait bust of Alexander the Great, in marble, staring across the room. Every Roman who entered understood what that placement meant. Caesar was not comparing himself to his ancestors. He was comparing himself to history's only other man who had actually conquered the known world. The atrium ceiling above the compluvium's perimeter was coffered, recessed panels painted in alternating terracotta red and charcoal black, each panel containing a gilded rosette at its center. The effect at dusk, with oil lamps burning below, was said to resemble a constellation map. Slaves moved through this space in absolute silence, a discipline enforced not by beatings, but by something Caesar apparently considered more effective, the knowledge that he could hear everything from the tablinum, his study, which opened directly onto the atrium without a door. In a room designed to impress the powerful, the most powerful feature was invisible: the absence of walls between Caesar and the people who served him. Inside the tablinum, Caesar's ivory chair faced the open atrium without a door between them. Every slave, every visitor, every whispered word belonged to him before it reached anyone else. The triclinium fed 60 guests at a time, but Caesar himself ate almost nothing. He consumed information instead, sober at the center, while rivals loosened by Alban wine revealed what they would never say sober. 3 of his 23 assassins had reclined on those cedarwood couches within 30 days of the Ides of March. He had watched them. He had simply miscalculated what he saw. The peristyle garden held 48 Corinthian columns in Pentelic marble, the same quarry that built the Parthenon, surrounding Syrian roses, Egyptian lotus, and a channel of salt water, Moray Eels Caesar, considered keeping status symbols beneath contempt. Cleopatra walked that colonnade at dawn, with an ibis in a gilded cage. Caesar installed her portrait in the temple of Venus Genetrix. The Senate said nothing. Publicly, the cubiculum had the only iron bolt in the palace, drawn from the inside. The man who controlled Rome needed one room where Rome could not enter. Calpurnia woke screaming 3 times the night before the Ides. Caesar recorded it on a wax tablet in his night script, barely legible, written in the dark by touch. Decimus Brutus arrived at dawn and walked him out of that room with a practiced laugh and a hand on Caesar's arm. Caesar did not look back at the palace. A cedarwood chest beside his chair was never found. One source says it held Cleopatra's encrypted letters. Another says it held a list of names. Both may be true. The bolt on the cubiculum door was still open when they brought the news back to Calpurnia. No one thought to close it. The palace held its breath for days. Caesar's palace did not die with Caesar. Augustus took the hill, dissolved the walls, and buried every room under his own ambition. But the bones remained: basalt floors under marble floors, serpentine stone under new pools, the tablinum's open mouth sealed at last behind a proper door. Archaeology found the layers. AI reconstructed the rooms. What you have seen in this video no living eye has seen since 44 BC. He built a machine designed to make one man the center of gravity for an entire civilization. It worked, until the morning it didn't, in a theater named after the one rival he had already destroyed. If this reconstruction pulled something loose in you, subscribe, because the next palace we enter is darker, older, and even less of it survived. We will see you inside.